Welcome back to another episode of Rooted and Restored. I'm excited to be here today with you and Callie. And before we even get started, I wanted to celebrate something that took shape over the last month since we met last. And that is we were the winners of our Best of Northport for mental health therapy here in Northport. And we are just so excited to be able to, just be a part of the community and also to celebrate what our clients have been saying about us and those that voted. So thank you so much. More than winning, Callie, it's the idea here that it's a dream come true for me, that we are bringing quality mental health care to this community. If I told you what it looked like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't think you'd believe me. And so it just means so much that mental health is being recognized in this community and we get to be a part of changing that. So thank you for those of you who voted, and thank you for those of you who believe in us. It's really, really special.
I think even just for a moment, like celebrating, like we won last year too, so this is our second year, but we also created the category. So I think also just to highlight mental health, like we've also just been trying to push it out and push the importance in the community too.
What a good point. Absolutely. Because when we asked if we could be a part of this last year, they said we don't have a category for you. So good point. Thanks for reminding me of that. Yes. And so it's just another piece of the puzzle that we feel like we're contributing to, is saying, hey, Northport, mental health is important, and it's important for us to be a part of the chamber, and it's important for us to be a part of the community where other businesses are recognized. Yeah. Fabulous. Thanks for saying that.
Of course.
All right. Well, without further ado, we are in the middle of a podcast series talking about relationships. I think a lot of our conversation last time leaned into couples relationships and these sort of things, but I think it's important for me to say before we jump into this next topic that relationships are relationships. Do they all have different features? Absolutely. But I think what we're really trying to hone in on is that we want to talk about all relationships too, that there's pieces of what we're chatting about that are specific to certain types of relationships, but we're talking about family relationships. We're talking about colleagues relationships. We're talking about any sort of space or place that connects you with another human being as we continue this series. And so if you haven't had a chance to review the last two podcasts, let this be a reminder that we are developing this content along the way, and we are shaping it around those experiences that we're having, both from people's feedback of this, but also from those folks that are inside of our offices. And we say that all the time on our podcast, that we're bringing this content out loud to you because this is stuff that we're seeing inside of our office, and we want to bring it to a greater space and place for you to either communicate this with your family members, with friends, but also so that you can take it home with you, right? Therapy just doesn't have to be in our offices. It can be everywhere and anywhere. So to kind of catch you up, we talked about relationships, what they teach us, how to navigate them. Last podcast, we talked about, do I stay or do I go? And we talked about what does it look like to really choose to leave. And we offered you a non-clinical assessment to just kind of give you a maybe more objective place to manage from here. And based on your feedback and based on some of the conversation we've had, Callie and I, we're going to talk about what does it look like if you truly choose to stay, right? So maybe a major rupture has happened in your relationship. Maybe you're finding yourself disconnected. Maybe there's something that has just been underneath the surface that's allowing you to feel like it's time to really reflect on, is this relationship growing, or is it time for me to go? And so what does it look like if you've found yourself saying, I want to stay, but there's broken spaces here? And Callie, as always, is going to extract as much information from me as possible and contribute, because this is coming up in your office too. And we'll see where this takes us.
Awesome. So I think what comes up for me first is being able to make the decision of like, I'm staying, I'm committing to trying in this relationship. Like you said, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, a family dynamic, you're committing to that choice, which can feel huge, and I think allows you to start that roadmap that you have of knowing where I'm going next. Because sometimes in the beginning stage, trying to figure out where you're going, there's so many moving pieces, and it's like, what's my next step? Because I don't even know what I want on my side of the fence. So being able to start that roadmap for yourself, I think, is huge. But then it's like, where do we go from there? Right? Because it is a starting point. So after you on your side of the fence choose, I want to stay in this relationship and I'm willing to commit to try, what do you feel like is the next chess piece that goes from there.
That's a great point. You said something, and I want to draw that out as a metaphor, like which side of the fence do I live on? That's an important feature of what you just said, right? We have to make a decision because not making a decision is a decision. And so it is important in our humanness, in our choice to continue an adventure like a relationship that has pain in it, to say, I'm going to live on this side of the fence or this side of the fence. Living on the you know what happens if we're trying to straddle a fence. It's very, very painful. One day we're here, one day we're there, and it's very confusing in who we are. So oftentimes I challenge couples or people that are trying to make this decision, give it 6 weeks, give it 90 days. What would it look like if you just said, I'm going to stay and I'm going to do my side of the street or my side of the fence work, and I'm going to see what happens? That's a decision that's important for you and your humanness, because at any given point you could be triggered. You could feel like this isn't working. And if you aren't connected to that agreement, you'll find yourself flip-flopping, and it's painful. It's painful to people around you. It's painful for the experiences you make as decisions like kind of that are on the peripheral of that. It's very painful. Another metaphor, just to connect it even deeper, is like if I have 1 foot on the boat and 1 foot on the dock and the boat starts taking off, what happens? Fall flat on your face in the water. So we got to make a decision. I'm getting on the boat and I'm going this direction, or I'm getting on the dock and I'm staying here. Whatever that looks like, it's an important feature. So to just kind of expound upon that feels really important. And then you're asking like, okay, so now I've made the decision to stay. It's saying that out loud to your partner and then deciding what that looks like to feel structured and supported. Realizing, Cal, that it's often that these experiences you're having in this relationship have existed far longer than this moment in time, right? And so if it took 10 years to get here, it's going to take time and effort and energy. And so if you did it alone for 10 years and it's fallen apart into the places it has, don't try to do it alone. Get connected to a body of people, therapy, a church, different support services, marriage retreat, family retreat, those kind of things, to start the journey of saying, I am going to stick this out. We need help to do that.
And I think just highlighting what you said, it is going to take a lot of work. So being able to say yes is important, but also knowing essentially what you're signing up for. Like you have to devote a lot of time on both sides to yourself to further your own individual healing, but also to pour into each other, because maybe for a long period of time you have been avoiding having 1 foot on the dock and 1 foot on the boat. There's not much room for avoiding, but sometimes the idea of staying in limbo, right, avoidance, like they'll sit in that for so long because it feels good at the moment, but then the idea of 6 months down the line, your explosion's gigantic because it's just kept bottling up.
Bingo. Absolutely. And you said something that feels like worth extracting too, is that when you are choosing to live in this place of staying, you've got to commit to doing your work. I read somewhere the other day that 2 C+ people do not equal an A+ relationship, right? So how do you move from that C+ version of you to the A+ version of you? That's the only way that you can have an A+ relationship, if it's both people are striving to be that version of themselves.
And naming, right, you only are in control of yourself, which I know we've named many times, but being able to say, if you're fully committed to it, being able to stay on your side of the fence and being able to say, I'm committed to this, I'm not going to control the other person, waiting in this for 6 weeks shows you a lot about yourself, but also the other person. At the end of the day, worst case scenario, you've grown tremendously through the process and your partner hasn't upheld like their end of the deal. But that also still gives you a roadmap of what looks next for yourself, right? And for the relationship.
Yeah, we slow things down and then we collect data. That's a big part of healing, right? It's like when we don't become part of the problem anymore, we become part of the solution, but the problem still exists. Well, then we get to collect data. Now we're not confused by our contributions because we are cleaning up our side. It's pretty special what you just said.
Yeah. And I think it's naming that. Like sometimes there's people that I feel like are very type A that are ready for the next step, right? And they want all these things to make sense and look perfect, but it's knowing sitting in the exploration season of anything is a step, and it's a huge step, because unless you have the data, you can't really make an educated next step.
Right. Absolutely. And that goes back to our podcast, Should I Stay or Should I Go? If your partner isn't choosing to do the work alongside of you and they're choosing to stay C plus, D plus, F, whatever it is, kind of material, and continued betrayal, addiction, domestic violence, emotional abuse, whatever it is that seems to be a key feature of the relationship, if that's not changing, it becomes very clear to you, right? Because people that aren't willing to change do a lot of what I'm going to call deflecting, right? And so they often confuse the partner that is doing the work by saying, that's not true, I didn't do it. And if the partner is foggy, the person isn't doing their own work, it can feel like an invitation to join in that belief when it isn't the truth at all. But when we can't stay on our side of the street objective and clear, we can fall victim to believing that at some level it's our responsibility that this person can't stop drinking alcohol or spending money or whatever it is that's causing the disruption in the relationship.
And I think when you have the analogy of the two sides of the fence, it's such a good analogy. But then also I say sometimes when there's fighting or arguments or disagreement or deflecting, being able to also say, like, you're not playing tug of war, right? Like, you are on the same side trying to overcome whatever obstacle it is if you're choosing to stay in that relationship. If there's infidelity and one person was the main contributor to seeking outside of the relationship, that's still a battle you are both on the same side fighting and trying to overcome.
Wow. And if we keep onto these metaphors today, which, by the way, our brains love, so this is huge for somebody that's watching today to see yourself outside of this in some of these metaphors. But, you know, the dropping the rope, right? We can tug a war in relationship all day long. And a lot of us were taught to do that. I'm right. No, you're right. No, I'm wrong. You're to blame. I'm to blame. And we do this back and forth, back and forth. I mean, it's a feature of who we are in our humanness. Many of us are very competitive and many of us fight for power or security. And so we hold tightly death grip to these situations. And what you're offering is like, drop the rope. We're not fighting. We're in it together. Like this isn't a battle between the two of us. This is a battle against whatever these things are that have caused such issues in our world, which, by the way, Cal, were likely present way before the relationship. The dynamics that led to these dysfunctional behaviors are way underneath the surface. There's an undercurrent. We talk about this. That's why we name the practice rooted therapies, because it's likely that infidelity is rooted in some sort of painful experience from childhood that was unresolved, that found its way through this space and place for this person. So drop the rope and let's get curious together.
Yeah, and asking yourself, right, is holding the rope worth the outcome? Right?
Not if you're trying to stay, right? Sure, if you want to keep battling and this is a feature of where you want to be, like, you are not going to be able, you will stay in the relationship dysfunctionally. You will not stay in an A+ relationship.
You're not going to cultivate change, which is what you're trying to do by staying.
Right. And this shows up, right? Like, gosh, this is so powerful. If you go to therapy, then I know you're in it. But is that person going to therapy because they really want to? No, you're like dragging them, like you're pulling the rope. And some clients, some relationships will become compliant like that. Like, if it'll just shut her up, if it'll just make him happy, I'll have sex or whatever. But it's not a feature of what they really want. And so there still is this battle, this tug of war. And that isn't a healthy relationship either.
Yeah, there's a difference between sharing your heart and sharing where there's maybe disconnect in the relationship and where maybe your needs aren't being met, but that's a vulnerable, honest conversation compared to like forcefully pushing somebody into like a corner of like, I need this, I need you to do this, and then there being frustration at the root of it instead of like a desire to truly love or show affection for your partner.
Absolutely, girl. And that feels really personal to me. And I try to share, we both do, our humanness here. I mean, a big feature of my childhood, I've sought security through control. Right. And so the more I had control over, the more I felt safe. It was such a deception to me. But anybody that ever knew me and came into a relationship with me would feel that. And it wasn't until your dad finally started calling me power chick and telling me, stop trying to control me, did I really look in the mirror and go, holy cow, yeah, you're not wrong. And like, what a gift to me and my healing when dad does things for himself, because he just does things for himself, not because I said, you should do this or do it this way. Right. I do it that way. I do it this way, but it doesn't mean he has to. And to see him wanting a healing journey on his own and to see him choosing healthy things for himself is so healthy for me and where I am. And it required me to drop the rope and realize I got to clean up my side of the street. And if he does, great. If he doesn't, then I have more information.
And also just looking internally for yourself, how much more love and admiration developed from him making those choices on his own. Because if you're like, oh, like, you should go move your body every day because I'm doing that. Great that he's doing it, but there's an essence where there is resentment that lives there. Like, oh, now he's doing it because I told him. Where if he just started choosing to do that, it's like, oh, okay. Like, he's doing this on his own. What's changed? This is attractive to me, or this is cool that we're aligning in this way again. Like,
Yeah. And it's pretty powerful for somebody who has insecurity issues to see other people choosing health and wellness and lifestyle choices that honor a relationship versus trying to force it, because it's inauthentic. And that's what I would want anybody listening today to understand, right? Like, when you drop that rope and you let things be what they are, there is something very healing that takes shape when you see somebody choose to do and fight and connect in the ways that honor you. And but it requires like a true like jump off the cliff moment to say, like, I'm going to abandon everything I know and have ever done. And maybe because it's you, Lisa and Callie, that are telling me to do it. But in all reality, like that's part of the growth on your side of the street.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, what do you have to lose? You try it and you don't like it, and you go back to going to the coping mechanism that you've used forever that you feel like served you. Worst case, you try something new.
That's right. And we're talking a lot about the person who maybe is the cleaner upper in a relationship. And I want to talk about somebody who might be the mess maker. We say this a lot, but if you just joined us, in dysfunctional relationships, the way that most relationships like can stay long term is that there's a person that cleans up the mess and feels a very strong responsibility for that. And then there's people that make messes, and I don't mean literal messes, but they could be, right? But maybe it's, they make dysfunctional choices, they're unfaithful, they have financial issues, whatever it is, but they notoriously are the people that have chaos going on in their world, and they need these two features of relationship to exist. So I want to talk to the person who maybe is the chaos maker, and they're going, okay, we finally started marriage therapy. I have this side piece is what your generation calls it. But I have this side piece and I'm not willing to let her go, or I'm not willing to let him go because I'm not sure that this marriage is going to work, or I'm not sure this thing is going to happen. If that is you aren't dropping the rope, right? If you are living in a fearful place that if I let this thing go, then I won't have that either, then you're not giving it 100%. And so if you are choosing to stay, I say this all the time, secrets have to stop. Those secret places in your life need to be revealed, and those chaotic experiences need to be unearthed. And if you're not willing to do that, right, you're still holding onto the rope.
Well, you're not able to be truly honest with yourself nor with the other person that you're trying to create this partnership with. Again, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or family member, like until you are able to have 100% truth with that other person, the trust can't exist because inevitably the shoe drops at some point.
We're kicking it with metaphors today.
So natural today too.
Yeah, the shoe will drop. We say this, darkness always comes to light. Something will be revealed. When we seek healing, sometimes we seek, revelation or truth, and we don't even realize what revelation and truth we're looking for.
And, if you're that person that's caused more of the dysfunction in the relationship, at the end of the day, if your relationship that you're in is not for you and you do choose to pursue something with this side piece, right? How is that going to be healthy if you're not operating out of health? You choosing to let go of it, fully dive into this marriage that you've been working on. And if it doesn't work and it comes to an end, you're able to start off on a fresh leaf, which that relationship might not even be the next step if you are truly working on yourself and healing yourself, right?
Yeah, I absolutely 100% want to drive that point home. We've got to drop the rope, whatever those isms are. Right? We're laughing about a side piece, but it's anything that's causing the chaotic situation to exist, right?
Going back to having truth, like in a relationship, in order to build trust, maybe kind of just exploring what you see in your room sometimes. Maybe you don't see this, maybe you do. But when you have couples that maybe divulge everything, right? And they're very honest. They're like, this is all on the table. This is everything. Like, I want to work this out. Maybe compared to a couple dynamic that every time they're coming into the office, it's like something else is coming out, and maybe it's keeping them stuck, and you're not able to work on the deeper roots because of that. Maybe what's that look like, or what are the differences in those two dynamics?
Yeah. So very rare would I imagine a couple being able to, at the very beginning, disclose everything, because there's likely been some sort of like real rupture and it doesn't feel safe to do that. There's a lot of schools of thought around how to fully disclose. But what I often see is it requires relationship with the therapist or whatever body of support that you're relying on before you can truly get real with yourself. And so oftentimes what I see in betrayal relationships or whatever chaos it takes a while, several sessions for that couple to get comfortable in therapy and to actually believe that it's helping, right? And then when that relationship and rapport is established, it's like, oh, I have something else to share. And so our humanness likes to deliver things in breadcrumbs or with fear, or like, I'll only deliver it this way. I'm always a believer in full disclosure. Now, details are a different conversation. Disclosure sounds like, I've been keeping a separate bank account from you, and I have been using it to buy things that I didn't think you would be okay with. And maybe that's enough information, right? The partner or the family member might say, what is it? And why did you do it? And what do you need? And what is that for? And how long has this been for? And this sort of thing. Those details sometimes are very painful to hear and aren't, in some schools of thought, necessary, right? Some of those details can be left at the door, right? Sometimes those details can be harmful, like sexual betrayal. Well, when did you start sleeping her, and what was her favorite position, and what did you like here? Those details can be very painful. And in some schools of thought, it's important to have full disclosure and have an question and answer session. And in others, it's not. In my opinion, it's important that it be a guided conversation and we meet our clients where they are. And so, breadcrumb disclosures or releases aren't healthy because it keeps that wound active, where if you think about it kind of like a car accident, right? Like if you just kept getting in that same car accident day in, day out, like that wound is going to keep growing, and it's never going to have time to heal, versus that one-time car accident that you go to the ER and whatever burn wound you have, and now you're getting the treatment for it and you're taking care of it with your ointments and your antibiotics. And over time, it's still a scar, but the wound has healed. And so that's what we hope to do in these full disclosures. They can be really painful to watch. And sometimes some of it has already leaked out. That's why they're in therapy. And so, that's a really important feature to talk about. Like, okay, if you do choose to stay, there's a piece of getting honest, but there's also a piece of really learning how to do this well and trust the environment, the therapeutic environment for sure.
And I heard you say before even being able to get to that step, being able to create safety within the relationship again, because there has maybe been some sense of like safety non-existent in the relationship based on whatever betrayal happened or whatever disconnect is happening. So I hear, right, therapy or having like a mentor can kind of be a good like mediator to kind of create some of that safe space. What are some other things that you feel like if a couple's not ready to venture out into that, or they're not always in the office, right? They're at home sometimes trying to recreate safety between them two.
Absolutely. And so we talk about this as a bank account, and we've said this on this podcast before, but it is so important that we understand that if we're not making positive deposits into a relationship, all the negative withdrawals will put us in the red, right? We wouldn't buy a significant purchase if we didn't have the money for it. I mean, I guess we would on credit and this sort of thing, but the reality is if we were looking at it as a checking account, you're not going to be able to make a purchase that you don't have money for. And this is what I try to help clients see all the time is like, where is your account? Where is your relational equity? If you haven't made many deposits and you're making tons of withdrawals right now, this is going to be very, very difficult to overcome. And so we start simple. What's one thing that you guys could start doing daily, every other day, weekly, that might feel fun, might feel connected, might feel safe enough to explore? We'll like go for a walk on the beach, or we'll start walking the dog together, or maybe we'll start cooking dinner together, or we'll be more intentional to turn the TV off when we sit down to eat as a family. Whatever these things might be, those are deposits that may be silly, right? But they're non-existent. And so in order to do this deep work, we got to find pathways to build those deposits.
Well, because like what you said, sometimes those healthy deposits might have been lacking for 5 years.
Right.
9 months, right? Doesn't matter the time period. But then if we have this huge betrayal or huge rupture we're working through, your brain is naturally going to gravitate towards that if there haven't been any healthy deposits in the past few months.
Right. And these can be like, what's your favorite show? I mean, it's not my favorite thing for a couple to do, to be distracted by something like this. But if that's a safe place to start, that's something different than you're in a room watching your own thing and I'm in the room watching my own thing, or I work till 10 o'clock at night and you're asleep when I get home. There's intentionality there of like, hey, we're trying to build something that wasn't there before.
And one thing leads to another, right? A show on the surface isn't always the best answer, but then sometimes questions get provoked and different things, and you're exploring something totally different than what you started with.
Absolutely, girl. Yeah. And this goes for families too, right? If there's been brokenness in the family and there's been a huge withdrawal and now we're trying to build back, like it's the car ride into the soccer practice. It's the back to school shopping. It's the let's clean your room together kind of things.
Something that I feel like is talked about like pretty frequently. I think there's two sides of the fence that people sometimes sit on with it. But when betrayal happens in a relationship, right, sometimes people are like, I just wanted to go back to the way it was, like before all this happened. Do you think that's possible?
I would ask that couple, if they were sitting with me or this relationship, like, what was it before? We kind of fantasize about the past sometimes. We create things that might not be there. Like we see this on Instagram a lot. The highlight reel stays with us. We forget the negative. I often ask, what was it really like back there? And then that usually provokes a lot of conversation. Oh, well, this happened. And oh, well, this happened. And I'm like, okay, you had a distraction, tolerance, something in that season of life that allowed you to sit with this. It wasn't as like, in the spotlight, but it was likely there way before. So to fantasize about going back, it's dangerous because it's probably not what you think it is. And I hear often, like, the first 2 years of our relationship was wonderful. Most of us can put our best foot forward for a while, right? And so oftentimes there was less responsibility back then in the first 2 years. There was more intentionality around dating and connecting. The beginning parts of sex, like, whoa, that can change anybody's mind about anybody, right? And so these are features of the first 2 years of a relationship. Be careful, because now you're 20 years in, now you're 15 years in, and you've experienced multiple challenges in your life. Maybe now you have children. Maybe now you have multiple, financial endeavors, whatever these things are. It's not even the same.
Well, and like you said, like sometimes questioning what it did look like, there is a level of obliviousness to it. In a good way and bad way. Like naturally, as you navigate through a relationship, there's change. And I think it can get compared to almost anything, even like as an adult thinking about like Christmas or like as a kid, like being able to sit in people like putting on this huge thing for you because you're the star of the show, like you're the kid in it, compared to being an adult. And it changes, right? Being able to give it to somebody else or like the next generation's important, but there can be a part of you in your heart where you're like, oh, this is sad. Like this season doesn't mean as much as it meant to me when I was 6 years old. But living in the past of it or sitting in it doesn't help serve you. So it's always your perspective on a situation. Like being able to sit and say, I've been in this relationship for 20 years and we've grown and gone through all these like highs and lows. is a beautiful thing, because not everybody can do that either.
The sustainability, the like stay with itness is a big feature of today's society, right? We know the statistics around divorce and commitment is just very difficult in today's world. We don't have nearly as much dependence on each other, which is healthy, but it also makes it easier to just exit, you know, and so that does create a void in terms of what you're talking about.
And I mean, life's hard. Life's also a beautiful thing, but your partner probably goes with you through like the death of your parents, like struggles with children, like own health problems, like so much chaos happens when you're doing life and when you're choosing to do it with another person. So while there's a lot of highs, there also are a lot of lows. So it's naming that and knowing that. So it's inevitable that it's going to go up and down. And the first 2 years, there is a sense of like it always being a high, because you do put your best foot forward. It is something new and exciting. But then after it becomes like normal, right, you have to put more effort into it.
Wow. And effort feels like an important place to maybe focus if you're choosing to stay, right? What effort it required in the first 2 years might be a different level of effort now. But here's the thing. It won't feel like effort if you're evolving, right? If you have chosen to be an A+ person and you're continuing on the journey of growth, it will feel like a healthy space for you. You'll feel the challenge of it. You'll want to be connected to it, right? It's not going to come easy. And somebody who's growing wants, right, the challenge. I'm not saying you want to fight every single day and these sort of things, but if you're evolving, it doesn't feel like effort.
That's good to just like sit on for a moment. That's powerful. I think also what comes up for me too sometimes is like there's a saying for it, but when you're married, like you still should pursue your partner, right? And the importance of that. And there might be somebody that's like, like I don't want to do that. Like that's so much work. Like I did that like for the first 6 months of dating. Like I've been with them for 5 years. Like I shouldn't have to put this much effort anymore. But I think sometimes there's a complacency that we adapt to where it's like, oh, like I'm married with them, like they're not going anywhere, like I don't need to put effort towards it. Like I want this promotion at work, so that's where like all of my like eggs are going right now, and that's where all my effort is right now. But you still have to water your relationship, because it isn't always gonna be there. If you choose not to put the effort forward, it does dwindle.
You're absolutely right. And some people will say it shouldn't be that way, right? But it is. Because when you spent a lot of time with somebody, when you're growing together, right, it requires a different level of intentionality. And I hear that word a lot in my office. Like, you stopped being intentional. What would it look like to be intentional? It's not supposed to come easy. These are two different lives. These are two different families. These are two different experiences. You have to choose the intentional side of things. And to your point earlier, when you are intentional and you are choosing, it just kind of develops into a pattern or a habit that just, you watch the show together, then you talk about it, then you have coffee the next day. And it does allow for this spontaneity that people are looking for, but it starts with an intentional moment, an intentional connection, an intentional calendar event, an intentional comment, question.
Something that's coming up for me that takes it a little bit out of like the romantic relationship, but I think is a good comparison too, is even like with kids, right? Yes, the effort that you put in with a newborn baby compared to a 16-year-old child is very different. But if you aren't putting deposits into it and you just like say, okay, like they can take care of themselves, like I'm doing my own thing, and like I've given them enough tools, but they still need help growing. They're not fully developed. And if you catch yourself doing that, you're going to see really fast behaviors that develop in your child that are going to be frustrating to you.
So good. I saw this online too from Dr. Amen. He said, listen, your kids' brains aren't developed until they're 25. Like, don't think that when they turn 18, just because, you know, culture and law says that they're ready to live by themselves, that they have the capacity neurologically to make healthy decisions for themselves. And man, that hit home, right? Because I often say it's much harder parenting teenagers than it is little kids, right? But we see these needs so clearly when they need a diaper change or they're crying for formula or you know, feeding or these sort of things. 16-year-olds, you do have to be much more intentional to connect. It's way different. They're not crying in the same way as they were. Bigger kids, bigger problems.
And they're all different, right? When they're infants, it's like, okay, they're crying. I have to change a diaper. I have to do this, regardless of what child you're looking at, right? Maybe they have different cries, but when they're 16, like their wounds look different. So being able to help them and put healthy deposits or steer them back onto a different track is different for every single 16-year-old you come across.
You got it, girl. And if the deposits aren't there, and there's a withdrawal because there's a separation in the family, which is a topic that we're planning on bringing to this series, or, a family member dies, or somebody gets very sick, or there's a change because we have to move for a work or whatever. Those are withdrawals that if those deposits aren't there, that could be very detrimental to that teenager.
Yeah. So I think just highlighting it can, again, come across in so many different relationships and so many different dynamics.
Absolutely. And if I stay, like that's a decision that I feel like parents and caregivers need to give themselves to. Like, I'm not abandoning this kid because they're having a reactive space inside of their life right now, or they're making decisions I don't support. I'm going to stand in the side of the street that says I'm an adult and I'm going to parent this child through this experience regardless. But some people do choose to leave.
Which I think is really powerful just to highlight, because as a caregiver, being in that moment, it brings up all of your own wounds in that, right? Like you saying, you're dysfunctional. I don't support what you're doing. You need to get some help. Like, you need to leave me alone. Like, I want to live my own life. Like, whoa, it brings up a lot for you. But just because you're oblivious to it doesn't mean that your child's still not suffering. And I think kids, even when they're teenagers or young adults, like sometimes their behaviors are their words because they don't know how to communicate things, especially if they haven't been taught. So they're screaming for help in ways that they just don't know how to ask.
And notice that then challenges their adult life too. That goes with them into all other aspects. And that's often the client at 35, 45, 55 years old that's in my office that's navigating broken relationship because there was a broken place that never was able to be healed back then.
Just being able to see the timeline of how it kind of develops, right?
Absolutely, girl.
So I think just highlighting what we just said, that betrayal doesn't lead to your relationship to looking the same prior to what happened, or this big rupture in your relationship, but also being able to question for yourself, do you really want to go back to what the relationship did look like?
Right. And was it really what you thought it was? Or was it just easier then because effort was lower, you were a C plus or, younger version of yourself. And now that the evolution is requiring your attention and you haven't yet done that maturing, is that really what it is?
So being able to just sit in that and absorb it.
Absolutely.
And be able to look at it with truth and not with what like our imagination is manifesting what it did look like.
Absolutely, girl. Absolutely.
When I know we talked a little bit about what it looks like to start creating some like healthy deposits in the relationship. And I think some of the things you named, like add emotional deposits or healthy emotional deposits, are slowly starting to create emotional connection again after something happens in a relationship. But also what's tied to that is intimacy and what that looks like in the relationship as well. So maybe piggybacking off of like emotionally and what that looks like, how do you feel like it transfers into intimacy when it's lacking because of what happened or what took place in the relationship?
Yeah, and so let's define intimacy here, because intimacy can be emotional intimacy, it can be spiritual intimacy, it can be financial intimacy, it can be sexual intimacy, right? And so define that. Are you talking about all intimacy, or do you want to talk about sex?
I guess all of them.
Yeah. So it's an important feature to even just name what intimacy is, right? Intimacy is the ability for us to feel like we can see our partner and they can see us. Into me, I see, which requires a vulnerability. And so when we are intimately connected, right, there's an ability for us to feel seen and heard by our partner. And if that's been broken because there's been blame, there's been that contempt that we talked about last time, there's been you've talked about betrayal a lot today. There's been deceit, dishonesty, just space built. That requires intentionality to come back to that. And I would say that people that lead with sexual intimacy over emotional intimacy almost always create transactional experiences. So while sex or intercourse or sexual intimacy is a beautiful gift in a relationship, it can also feel dangerous, or I use the word transactional, or just like a tool to reconnect when we haven't really done the deeper work to connect emotionally. So that's a big feature of the work that I get to do when we're talking up to this subject, is because some people think, well, listen, we just haven't had sex in a year and now we're going to start having sex again. That's going to also be an issue in 6 weeks, 6 months, because if that's the only thing you're doing to add deposits, you're not doing the peripheral work. We are a whole human that requires a whole connection to ourselves. And so I think that sometimes is disorienting for couples. So if you're choosing to stay, be careful, I think, is an important feature of this, that the reason you're choosing to stay isn't because you're just choosing this one thing and this one thing has improved. The whole thing needs to be looked at.
Well, when you're also just looking at the sexual intimacy part, right? All the endorphins and all these different like chemical pieces, like it feels great in the moment or thereafter, but at the end of the day, your problem's still there and it still exists. So if you're not willing to address the whole picture, again, right, you're just going to end up right back in the cycle of fighting and dysfunction of the same things over and over again.
Yeah. And it can feel really exhilarating for a couple that hasn't been choosing sexual intimacy, has been choosing other experiences. And now they say, like, the thread of our relationship is ending. Let's reconnect in this way. That can feel really exhilarating, to your point. Like, so many pleasure spots on our body. This is what our body's created to do. This is exciting. This is new again. Dangerous, though, because if that's the only thing, like I said earlier, connecting us, it doesn't work.
So I'm also hearing like making sure you don't jump all into it again, right? Or if it's like, okay, this maybe will fix it, so we're going to do it, right? Being able to take those slow baby steps of building the emotional connection first in smaller ways, of going back and like having intentional date time or going on a walk and different things, and slowly putting your feet in the water and not jumping and fully immersing yourself again.
Because people have babies because of this. They buy new houses. They go looking for new cars. We go on 12 trips in a year. Like, these are all features that people have used through their journeys as couples, as families, to mitigate some of these pain points. And not that they're wrong in their innocentness, but if that's what you're using as a tool to overcome, it's not going to work. It'll work for a time. It'll blind you or distract you for a time, but it'll dissolve.
And like you said, while they're beautiful things in a sense, depending on where your motive is, it's distracting or distractions.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's land this. It feels really important to continue to use the metaphor about dropping the rope. The question is, I'm choosing to stay, now what? And it really feels important, a couple things that we talked about today. And that is, are you choosing to be an A+ person, right? And if you're not, don't expect to have an A+ relationship. Is your partner choosing to be an A+ person? And are you on the side of the fence together saying, we are choosing this relationship and we are fighting the dysfunction that we've brought into this relationship that has been delivered to us through other people, whatever that is? Are we fighting together for the same goal? And is this something that we both are battling for? Because if you're not both battling for it, it's going to make it very difficult. To your point, though, earlier, Cal, if you choose to stay, you will still get something out of it if your partner doesn't choose to be an A+ person with you. You will leave the relationship, if that's what you choose to do after the data is delivered, a very transformed person, because the work will have been lived inside of you, right? But if you do choose to stay, I would suggest that you not do this alone and not try to use some of those old behaviors, some of those old experiences to disguise what's really underneath the surface. Find a trusted person, connect with people that feel safe to you, and allow them to guide you through a process of transformation, uncovering these things in a safe container, not trying to do it alone. Yeah. And so if this resonates with you, I always land with saying, hey, visit us at rootedtherapies.org. We offer 15-minute consultations, and we'll sit with you and just hear what's going on in your world and offer you some of the experiences we have here. But if not rooted, try to look for something that resonates with you. And if this is connecting with you and you feel like there's somebody in your world that would benefit, share it, like it, tell us what else feels important for us to talk about in here. And this is an invitation. I think next time we're talking about divorce, perhaps. And, okay, you went through this whole series, and maybe now you're really looking at the separation part. Like, what does it look like living after divorce? What does it look like repair after divorce? Just as we're kind of thinking about all the ways in which people are impacted by decisions and relationship difficulties. So on that note, Callie, thank you. Your metaphors were fabulous today. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.